Caroline woke at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, not because she wanted to, but because her body simply couldn't stay in the unconsciousness of sleep any longer. The last 7 months had become a grey blur of days that blended into one another, without distinction, without purpose, without light. The Seattle apartment was plunged into darkness. The curtains had been closed for weeks, or was it months? Caroline had lost count. The pile of dirty dishes in the sink overflowed onto the kitchen counter, covered in a thin layer of caked-on grease. The sour smell of uncollected trash mingled with the musty odor of clothes piled on the bedroom floor. But Caroline no longer felt any of that. Her ability to care had evaporated along with her will to live. "You need to get out of bed, Caroline. Please." Her sister Emily's voice echoed in her mind. The last visit had been 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. Emily had cried, she had begged, she had threatened to call someone, some emergency services, something. But Caroline just stared at the wall, her eyes empty like 2 dry wells in the desert of her soul. Depression didn't come all at once. It crept in gradually, like a toxic fog that spreads silently until it consumes every inch of breathable air. It began after she was fired from the tech company where she'd worked for 8 years. Then came the breakup with James, her fiancé, who couldn't handle her difficult times anymore. So her best friend, Sarah, simply stopped answering her calls. "You've been so negative lately," was the farewell text message she received. One by one, the pillars of her life crumbled, and Caroline crumbled with her. The sensation was physical. It wasn't just sadness, it was as if a concrete weight were permanently seated on her chest, compressing her lungs, making each breath a conscious effort. Her limbs weighed tons. Lifting her arm to get a glass of water seemed to require the energy needed to climb a mountain, so she simply stopped trying. Calls from the bank about overdue bills went straight to voicemail. Emails from old colleagues remained unread. The cell phone, almost always dead, lay forgotten somewhere on the couch. The outside world had become a distant, irrelevant, unreachable abstraction. But the worst part wasn't the physical paralysis. The worst part was the absolute mental void. Caroline used to have dreams, plans, ambitions. She wanted to travel to Japan, learn Italian, maybe write a book someday. Now, when she tried to envision any future, she found only a black, endless void. Her mind had become a barren desert where no hopeful thought could germinate. "There is nothing left," she whispered to herself in the endless dawns. "I am nothing left." The dark thoughts began 3 months ago. At first, they were just whispers. What if you just disappeared? But gradually, they grew louder, more insistent, more seductive. "No one will miss you. You're a burden. The world would be better off without you." Caroline knew this wasn't true, or at least a small, rational part buried deep within her psyche did. But depression is a cruel liar that whispers with the voice of absolute truth. And day by day, Caroline believed it more and more. That Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon, she finally dragged herself out of bed, not by choice, but because her bladder gave her no choice. As she passed the bathroom mirror, she avoided her own reflection. She could no longer recognize herself. The woman with the messy hair, pale skin, deep circles under her eyes, and 20 pounds lighter was not Caroline. She was a ghost wearing her skin. As she mechanically washed her hands, her eyes fell on the bottle of pills on the shelf. Antidepressants her doctor had prescribed months ago. She'd taken them for 3 weeks before stopping. They really don't make a difference, she thought at the time. But now, looking at that orange bottle, a different thought crossed her mind. "If I take them all at once?" Caroline's hand trembled as she reached for the vial. Her heart beat slow, heavy, tired, so tired of fighting, so tired of existing. Her fingers brushed the cool plastic, and then the phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the morbid silence of the apartment like a scream. Caroline froze, hand still outstretched, suspended between two drastically different futures. The phone kept ringing, once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, something inside her, something tiny, barely perceptible but still alive, made her legs move. She staggered into the living room, found her phone among the sofa cushions, and stared at the screen. Michael, brother. Caroline hadn't spoken to her older brother in almost a year. They'd fought over something that now seemed completely irrelevant. Her finger hovered over the red reject button. But then, in that frozen second, she answered. Hello? His own voice sounded strange, hoarse, cracked from months of disuse. Caroline, Caroline! Thank God! I was worried. Emily told me that, listen, I know things are hard. I know we've grown apart. But I need you to hear this. Michael's voice was different. It didn't have the judgmental tone Caroline had expected, nor the residual irritation from their last conversation. There was something else, urgency mixed with something that felt like genuine fear. Michael, Caroline began, but the words died in her throat. What could she say? That she was seconds away from ending it all? That she could barely remember why life mattered? No, let me go first, please. Michael took a deep breath. Caroline, I almost died last week. The silence that followed was heavy. Caroline felt something stir inside her. Not hope, nothing so grand, but perhaps curiosity, that primal spark that keeps humans connected to other humans. What? How? His voice was barely a whisper. Car accident. Some idiot ran a red light at Pike and Broadway. I rolled over 3 times. The paramedic said I was lucky to be alive. He paused. But you know what went through my head when the car started spinning? It wasn't my wife. It wasn't my kids. It was you, Caroline. It was the fact that the last thing I said to you was that you were too dramatic and that I was tired of your tantrums. I was going to die, and those were the last words between us. Caroline felt hot tears well up, the first in months. She had become so numb that she had forgotten how to cry. I lay in the hospital bed thinking, what if she really needed me back then? What if I'd turned my back on my sister when she was drowning? Michael's voice broke. Emily told me how you were. She told me about the apartment, about you not getting out of bed, about not answering texts. Caroline, I know what's going on, and I came here to tell you that I won't let you give up. You don't understand, Michael. Caroline slid down the wall until she sat on the cold floor. It's not about giving up. It's about having nothing left to fight for. I don't feel anything anymore. Not sadness, not anger, not fear, just emptiness. It's like my soul has evaporated, and all that's left is this tired body that keeps breathing out of sheer biological stubbornness. I know it seems that way now. But Caroline, remember when Mom died? You were 16. I was 21. Remember what you said to me when you found me crying in the basement 3 months after the funeral? Caroline closed her eyes. The memory was blurry, distant, as if it belonged to someone else. I said that the pain meant the love had been real. That feeling, her absence, was proof that she mattered. Exactly. And you told me that even when it feels like it'll never get better, even when you can't imagine a tomorrow without that pain, time doesn't ask permission. It keeps passing, and little by little you learn to carry the weight differently. Michael sighed. Now this is me saying it to you. What you're feeling, or not feeling, is real. Your pain is real. But it's not permanent, Caroline. It feels permanent, but it's not. You don't know that. Caroline hugged her knees to her chest. I tried, Michael. I tried therapy for 2 sessions before I stopped. I tried the medication. I tried positive thinking, like everyone keeps saying. Nothing works. I'm broken beyond repair. 2 treatments isn't trying. Stopping medication after 3 weeks isn't trying. His voice was gentle but firm. Depression isn't like the flu that goes away with a dose of antibiotics. It's like learning to walk again after a serious accident. It hurts, it's slow, it has relapses, but it's possible. Caroline wanted to believe. God, she did. But years of crushed hopes had built a wall around any possibility of faith in the future. "I'm coming," Michael said suddenly. "I'm catching the next flight out of Portland. I should be there in a few hours. And no, you can't stop me. I already bought the ticket while we were talking." "Michael, you don't have to." "I do, and you do too. You need someone to remind you that you're still here, that you're still breathing, that you can still choose to start over." He paused. "You're in the bathroom right now, aren't you?" Caroline froze. "How did you?" "Because Emily told me about the pills, and because I know you. I know that tone of voice, that final resignation." His voice deepened. "Caroline, listen to me. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I need you to wait. Just wait for me to get here. Give me those 3 hours. If after we talk you still feel like there's no way out, at least you'll have seen me one last time. I deserve that. You deserve that." The silence stretched. Caroline looked again at the bottle of pills on the bathroom shelf, then at the phone in her hand. 2 choices, 2 radically different futures. One permanent, final, silent. The other uncertain, frightening, but still unwritten. 3 hours, Caroline whispered. 3 hours. Promise you'll wait. Every fiber of his being wanted to refuse, wanted to end this conversation and return to the silent plan he'd formed. But something, maybe love for his brother, maybe just exhaustion, made the words come out. "I promise. 3 hours. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much. Will you stay on the line with me? I'm going to take an Uber to the airport now. Just stay with me." And for the first time in months, Caroline wasn't completely alone. Caroline remained on the bathroom floor, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Michael narrate his journey to the airport. He talked about mundane things. The traffic in Portland, the Uber driver who wouldn't stop talking about his dog, the low-hanging clouds typical of autumn in the Pacific Northwest. Ordinary things, normal things, things that belonged to a world Caroline had forgotten how to inhabit. But she listened, and listening was more than she had done in months. "I'm already at the boarding gate," Michael announced eventually. "The flight leaves in 40 minutes. Are you still there?" "I still am." Caroline's voice was weak but present. "Great, that's great." He breathed a sigh of relief. "Look, I'll have to hang up when I get on the plane, but I'll call you as soon as I land, okay? In the meantime, I need you to promise me something." Caroline didn't answer. Promises seemed too heavy for someone who could barely get out of bed. "Just go to the kitchen, drink a glass of water, eat something, it doesn't matter what. It could be a cracker, an apple, anything. Your brain needs fuel, Caroline. Depression gets worse when you don't eat. It's biology, not weakness. I have no food. There has to be something. Can you check for me?" With a monumental effort, Caroline got to her feet. Her legs were shaking after days of lying down. She staggered to the kitchen, each step seeming to cover miles. She opened the refrigerator, practically empty except for a 2-week-old yogurt and dried-out condiments. The cabinets revealed a box of cereal, open so long it was probably rancid, 2 cans of soup and a bag of rice. "I found soup," she muttered. "Perfect, open a can. You don't even need to heat it if you don't want to. Just eat it." Caroline obeyed mechanically. Not because she was hungry, she hadn't been hungry in months, but because it was easier than arguing. The cold tomato soup tasted like wet cardboard, but she forced spoonfuls into her mouth until half the can was gone. "I got it," she said into the phone. "You're amazing, seriously. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it is. It's huge." The excitement in Michael's voice was palpable. "I'm going to board now. Remember 3 hours. Actually, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes now. You can do it. I know you can." The silence that followed the hang-up was deafening. Caroline looked around her apartment as if seeing it for the first time. The devastation was complete. Piles of unopened mail covered the coffee table. Dirty clothes formed mountains in the corners. The layer of dust on every surface told the story of weeks of total neglect. This was no home. It was a tomb where she had buried herself alive. The familiar weight began to settle on his chest again. The inner voice, that cruel liar, whispered, "Look at what you've become. Look at this destruction. You're a human disaster. Why continue? Why make your brother go all this way only to find a greater burden?" Caroline closed her eyes, trying to block out the thoughts. But they had no doors, no walls. They seeped through every crevice of her consciousness. 2 hours and 35 minutes remaining. She crawled onto the couch, sinking into the cushions that had become both her refuge and her prison. The remote was somewhere there, but she didn't even bother looking for it. Turning on the TV would require deciding what to watch, and decisions, even tiny ones, were impossible when you didn't care about anything at all. Instead, Caroline just stared at the ceiling. Damp patches formed abstract patterns there. She tried to find shapes in them, a dragon perhaps, or a tree, as she had as a child, but her mind was too dull even for imagination. Memories began to surface uninvited. Caroline before her depression, that vibrant woman who laughed too loudly in restaurants, who threw surprise parties for friends, who dreamed big, the software developer who had created an app that helped thousands, the radiant bride who was planning a wedding for the following spring, the daughter who called her mother every Sunday without fail that Caroline was dead. She had to be, because the pathetic creature that now occupied her body was unrecognizable. "But she's not dead yet," a small voice whispered in the back of his mind. Not the cruel voice of depression, but something different, something that sounded like his own voice from years ago. "She's buried, suffocating, but she's still breathing somewhere down there." Caroline shook her head. Delusions of hope were crueler than resignation. Hope meant the possibility of disappointment, and she couldn't bear any more disappointments. Her phone vibrated. A text from Emily. "Michael told me he spoke to you. I'm so proud of you for answering. That's brave, Caroline. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it is. Love you." Brave. The word echoed bitterly. There was nothing brave about existing by inertia. There was no courage in simply not being dead yet. Bravery was choosing to fight, and Caroline wasn't fighting. She was just waiting for someone else to make the decision for her. 2 hours and 15 minutes. Time dragged on with cruel slowness. Each minute seemed like hours. Caroline shifted on the couch, then returned. She got up to go to the bathroom. She drank more water because it was something to do. Anything to fill the endless seconds. And then, without warning, exhaustion overtook her. Not the kind of exhaustion that comes after a productive day, but the deep, utter exhaustion of a body and mind that had struggled for months just to exist. Caroline closed her eyes, intending to rest for just a moment. She slept, and he dreamed for the first time in a long time. In the dream, Caroline was in a forest. Not an ordinary forest, but something from her childhood memories. The trails near her grandmother's house in Oregon, where she spent entire summers exploring among giant pines. The air smelled of damp earth and sap, rich and alive. Sunlight filtered through the treetops in golden rays that felt solid enough to touch. She was walking, but her feet weren't touching the ground. She was floating a few inches above the dark green moss that covered everything. And then she saw her, a younger version of herself, maybe 12, sitting on a large rock near a stream. Young Caroline was crying. "Why are you crying?" Adult Caroline asked, her voice echoing strangely in the dream space. The girl lifted her tear-stained face. "Because you gave up on me." The words hit Caroline like a physical punch. I didn't mean to. I had so many dreams." The girl stood up, and Caroline saw that she was wearing the same t-shirt she'd worn that summer, the one with a space rocket on it. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to build amazing things. I wanted to help people. I wanted to love and be loved. I wanted to matter. Her eyes, Caroline's eyes, gleamed with accusation and sadness. And you just decided none of it was worth it. You don't understand how hard it is. Caroline heard her own voice crack. You don't know pain yet. You don't know how the world crushes you. How people let you down, how you can do everything right and still lose everything. And so you're going to throw away all the years I dreamed of living? The girl stepped forward. That Caroline, me, fought through hard nights when Daddy drank, fought when the kids at school laughed at my old clothes, survived when I thought I couldn't, and I did it all because I believed that one day, someday, I would be free, I would be strong, I would be happy. Tears streamed down adult Caroline's face. I betrayed you. I betrayed that girl. Not yet. The girl held out her small hand. You're still breathing. You're still choosing. The story isn't over yet, Caroline. You've just forgotten how to turn the page. Caroline wanted to take her hand, but her own hands felt too heavy to lift. I don't know how to go on anymore. I've forgotten how to do this. Then relearn. The girl's voice grew softer. 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time, one small choice at a time. You don't have to climb the whole mountain today. You just have to take one step. The forest began to fade, the edges of the dream dissolving into grey mist. The girl also began to disappear, becoming transparent as glass. Don't go, Caroline screamed. Please don't leave me alone again. I never left you. The girl's voice echoed as she disappeared completely. I was always here. I was just waiting for you to hear me again. Caroline woke with a start, her heart racing. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The dark living room, the hard sofa beneath her, the heavy silence of the apartment. Reality returned like a cold wave, but something was different. She still felt the weight of depression, still felt that exhaustion in her bones. But there was something else now, a tiny spark, so small it could almost be imagination, something that felt dangerously purposeful. Her phone vibrated furiously. She picked it up with trembling hands. 7 missed calls from Michael, a dozen messages. She glanced at the time. 7:47 p.m. She had slept for almost 3 hours. The phone rang in his hand. Michael. Caroline. Thank God. We landed 20 minutes ago and you weren't answering, and I thought that maybe... His voice was thick with barely contained panic. I'm here. I fell asleep. I'm sorry. The words came out slowly, but they were true. Michael's sigh of relief was audible. I'm in a cab now. I should be there in 15 minutes. Are you okay? Carolyn considered the question. Was she okay? No, not even remotely, but she was alive. She had kept her promise. 3 hours had passed, and she was still here. I'm not okay, she answered honestly, but I'm still here. That's all that matters right now. That's all. You being here. Michael paused. I'll come up when I get there, okay? And Caroline, thank you for waiting, for choosing to stay. After he hung up, Caroline remained sitting on the couch, staring at her hands in her lap. Hands that just hours ago had reached for that bottle of pills. Hands that could have ended it all, but didn't. She didn't know if it was strength or just cowardice. She didn't know if staying was courage or simply a lack of courage to leave. But as she sat there in the darkness, she thought of the girl in her dream, of the child she had been, of the dreams she used to have. Slowly, with the movements of someone relearning how a body works, Caroline stood. She walked to the window and for the first time in months, opened the curtains. The evening light streamed in, not bright, just the soft October twilight in Seattle. But after so long in the darkness, even that dim light felt almost violent. Caroline blinked against it, letting her eyes adjust. Outside, life went on. Cars passed. People walked on the sidewalks with their shopping bags and dogs on leashes. A child laughed as she chased pigeons. The world hadn't stopped just because she had. It simply kept spinning, indifferent to her pain. But maybe that was a good thing. Maybe it meant there was still room for her in him, that she could enter again, eventually. Not today. Maybe not even tomorrow, but someday. One step, she whispered to herself, echoing the words of the girl in the dream. Just one step. The doorbell rang. Carolyn stood frozen for a moment, staring at the door as if it were a barrier between two worlds. On the other side was her brother, a real, tangible human connection. On this side was her, a wreck of a person, surrounded by the rubble of her crumbling life. Letting anyone see that felt like an unbearable exposure. The doorbell rang again, followed by soft knocks. "Caroline, it's me. Can I come in?" Her legs moved before her mind could protest. She unlocked the door and slowly opened it. Michael stood there, his carry-on bag at his feet, his face etched with simultaneous concern and relief. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then he stepped forward and wrapped her in a hug. Caroline hadn't been touched by another human being in months. Michael's embrace was firm, warm, real in a way that almost hurt. For a second, she stiffened, her body forgetting how to respond to affection. But then something inside her broke. Not in the destructive way she'd grown accustomed to, but like ice cracking under the spring sun. She began to cry. They weren't silent tears. They were deep, violent sobs that came from a place she'd locked away for months. Years of pain, months of emptiness, weeks of despair, all spilling out at once in uncontrollable waves. Her legs gave out, and Michael caught her, lowering them both to the hallway floor, still wrapped in each other's arms. "It's okay. Let it out. It's okay." He repeated the words like a mantra, his hand rubbing her back in soothing circles like they did as children. I can't take it anymore, Michael." The words came out in broken sobs. "I tried. I swear I tried. But everything's broken. I'm broken, and I don't know how to fix it." "You don't have to fix it yourself." Michael pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "And broken doesn't mean irreparable. It means you've been through something devastating. It means you're human." He looked past her into the apartment, and Caroline saw his face process the devastation. The dirt, the disarray, the utter abandonment. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only sad understanding. "Let's go in. You must be exhausted from standing at the door." Michael picked up his suitcase and gently guided Caroline back inside, closing the door behind them. He didn't comment on the state of the place. He simply took off his coat, threw it over a chair, and sat on the sofa beside her. For long minutes, they just sat there in silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but the kind of stillness that exists between people who share blood and history. "When did you stop eating regularly?" Michael asked eventually, voice soft. Caroline shrugged. "I don't know. A few months ago, food stopped tasting good, and then it stopped mattering whether I ate it or not." "And sleep?" "I sleep a lot, or I stay up all night. There's not much difference between the two. They both feel equally empty." Michael nodded, processing. "And the thoughts, the dark ones?" Caroline looked down at her hands. Admitting it out loud seemed to make it all more real, more frightening. "Every day, every hour sometimes. It's like having someone constantly whispering that the world would be better off without you. And the worst part, eventually, you start to believe it. But you didn't act on them today. Even though you had the opportunity, you chose not to." Michael turned to face her fully. "Do you know why?" "Because you called. If you hadn't called at that exact moment..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "It wasn't just because I called, Caroline. It was because some part of you, no matter how small, still wants to be here, still has an attachment to life, even if you can't feel it clearly right now. He took her hand. That part exists. I saw it when you answered the phone. I heard it in your voice when you promised to wait. Caroline wanted to argue, tell him he was wrong, that he was just too much of a coward. But she thought of the girl in her dream, the younger version of herself who still had hope. Maybe Michael was right. Maybe that spark still existed somewhere deep inside. I don't know how to get out of this, she admitted. I've been sad before. I've been through hard things. But this is different. It's like my brain has been hijacked by something that only knows despair, and I don't have the keys back. Then let's find the keys together. Michael squeezed her hand. First, tomorrow morning, we'll find a real psychiatrist, not online therapy or rushed appointments, someone who specializes in severe depression. Second, you'll go back on medication, but this time we'll give it time to work. Months, if necessary. Third, I'll be here for 2 weeks. I'll help you get this place in order, establish a basic routine, and Emily will come over the weekend. Michael, you have work, you have family, and you're my family. He interrupted her firmly. My wife, Jennifer, understands. My kids understand. In fact, little David drew this for you. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. Caroline opened it to find a child's drawing of stick figures, one of them with long brown hair. That's you, and this is me, and here's Jennifer and the kids. He wrote, "Please get better, Aunt Caroline. We love you." The tears came again, but softer this time. Caroline stared at the drawing, those simple, clumsy lines made by 5-year-old hands. Love, pure and uncomplicated. She'd forgotten it existed. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "It's not about deserving, it's about belonging. You belong in this family, you belong in this world, and even if you can't see that now, we'll hold that truth for you until you do." Michael stood up and held out his hand. "Now, when was the last time you took a shower?" Caroline made an embarrassed face. "I don't remember." "So here's the first small step, a shower. I'll order food while you're in the shower. Nothing heavy, maybe soup and bread, and then we'll go to sleep. Tomorrow we'll start rebuilding, not all at once, just 1 brick a day." It took physical strength for Caroline to get up. Her body protested the movement after lying down for so long, but she accepted Michael's hand and stood, staggering, exhausted, broken, but standing. The shower was an almost spiritual experience. The warm water against her skin was a sensation Caroline had forgotten existed. She stood there under the spray, letting the water wash away months of neglect, watching the grime slide down the drain in grey spirals. She didn't feel clean afterward. Cleanliness seemed a distant concept, but she felt less lost, less ghost, more person. When he emerged, he found Michael had done more than order food. The dirty dishes were gone from the sink. The fetid trash was in bags by the door, ready to go down. The clothes on the floor were piled in a corner, separated for washing. He hadn't tidied everything. The task was too monumental, but he had created small islands of order in the ocean of chaos. "Chicken noodle soup," Michael announced, pointing to the 2 bowls on the clean table. "And French bread, nothing that'll turn your stomach." Caroline sat down mechanically. The smell of food should have been comforting, but her stomach was knotted after months of emotional and physical starvation. Still, she picked up the spoon. She brought it to her mouth, swallowed, repeated. Michael ate beside her, not looking directly at her, giving her space to exist unobserved like an experiment. "I've hired a cleaning lady for tomorrow afternoon," he said casually between spoonfuls. "She's coming to do some deep cleaning, not because you need it, but because no one should have to clean up months of mess alone while battling depression. It's logistics, not judgment." Caroline nodded. She didn't have the energy to protest, and honestly, the thought of having to clean everything herself was too paralyzing to consider. And I have an appointment with Dr. Rachel Anderson for tomorrow morning at 10. She's a psychiatrist specializing in severe depression and mood disorders. Dr. Harris at the clinic recommended her when I explained the situation. I'll come with you if you want, or I can wait in the office. Are you really going to do all this? Caroline asked, her voice small. Caroline, you almost died today, or at least you almost chose to die. This isn't something you can recover from with willpower and positive thinking. His eyes were serious. Depression at this level is a medical emergency. It's as real as a heart attack or a broken bone. And you need real treatment, not motivational quotes on postcards. They finished eating in silence. Caroline managed half the bowl before her stomach refused any more, but it was half more than she had eaten in days. I'll sleep on the couch, Michael announced afterward. You take your bed. You need your own space. The bed is filthy. Then I'll change the sheets. Do you have clean sheets? Caroline thought. Hall closet, top shelf. 15 minutes later, his bed had fresh sheets, and Michael had found his favorite pillow, the star-patterned one he'd used since college, buried under a pile of clothes. Seeing that pillow brought a pang of something. Nostalgia, perhaps. A memory of when life had texture and meaning. Try to sleep, Michael said from the bedroom doorway. If you need me during the night, I'm here. Literally, just call me. Michael, Caroline called as he started to leave. Try. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. He came back and kissed her forehead, a gesture they hadn't made since they were children. Family doesn't give up. Never. Alone in her room, Caroline lay on the clean bed. Her body sank into the mattress with exhausted relief. She expected the dark thoughts to return now in the stillness of the night. She expected the cruel whisper of depression telling her she was a burden, that Michael was wasting her time, that she should just end it all. The thoughts came. But this time, there was another voice too. Weak, barely audible, but present. The voice of the girl from the dream. Her brother's voice, the voice of a version of herself that hadn't completely given up yet. One day at a time, she whispered to the dark room, one step at a time. Morning arrived with brutal clarity. Caroline woke at 8, the alarm clock Michael had set blaring mercilessly. Every cell in her body screamed to go back to sleep, to pull the covers over her head and slip back into unconsciousness. But Michael knocked on the door. Coffee's ready. Appointment in 2 hours. You can do it. Could she? Caroline wasn't sure. Getting up felt like climbing Everest. Getting dressed felt like solving advanced calculus. Leaving the apartment seemed as impossible as flying to the moon. But the alternative was returning to that dark place where she'd been yesterday. And part of her, that tiny spark, didn't want to go back. Then she stood up. The coffee was strong and sweet. Michael remembered how she liked it. She drank half a cup, ate half a slice of toast. Small victories that felt monumental. You don't have to be perfectly dressed, Michael said, watching her look desperately at her closet. Sweatpants and a tank top are fine. No one's judging you there. Caroline wore the simplest clothing she could find. Every movement was deliberate, weighted, conscious. Brushing her teeth, tying her hair, putting on her sneakers, tasks that normal people did without thinking, but for her required monumental decisions. The drive to the clinic was an anxious blur. Seattle was sunny, rare for October, and the light felt harsh after so much darkness. People hurried past, immersed in their normal, functional lives. Caroline felt alien among them. A human imposter trying to pretend she belonged. Dr. Anderson's waiting room was surprisingly welcoming. Soft colors, green plants, and soft instrumental music. It didn't have that clinical smell Caroline associated with hospitals. Michael sat beside her saying nothing, just present. Caroline Mitchell. A woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway, grey hair tied in a loose bun, red-framed glasses, and a kind but not overly warm smile. Dr. Anderson had that rare quality of seeming completely present, as if in that moment, Caroline were the only person in the universe who mattered. Caroline looked at Michael, sudden panic tightening her chest. He squeezed her hand. "Do you want me to go with you?" She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But something, maybe residual pride, maybe a need to do this alone, made her shake her head. "Wait here? I'm not going anywhere." Dr. Anderson's office was even more welcoming than the waiting room. Shelves filled with books, a comfortable armchair where Caroline was gently directed, and a window overlooking trees swaying in the breeze. The doctor sat in a chair facing the front, not behind an imposing desk, eliminating the physical barrier between them. "So, Caroline," she began, her voice calm and clear, "your brother called me last night. He gave me some basic details about what you're going through. But I'd like to hear from you, in your own words, unfiltered, without fear of judgment. How are you feeling?" The words stuck in Caroline's throat. How to describe the indescribable, how to put into language something that transcended words. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't feel anything," he finally said. "And at the same time, I feel everything worse. It's like I'm underwater. I see people living above the surface of the water, breathing normally, laughing, moving. But I'm below, drowning in slow motion. And I can't get air. And the worst part is that eventually you stop fighting. You just let the water fill your lungs because fighting hurts too much." Dr. Anderson wrote occasionally, but mostly just listened, her eyes never leaving Caroline's face. There was no shock there, no performative pity, just professional understanding and something that felt like genuine empathy. "And when did this start? Can you pinpoint a specific moment?" Caroline spoke, about the layoff that came out of the blue after 8 years of dedication, about James saying he couldn't deal with her problems anymore, and leaving the engagement ring on the kitchen table before leaving. About Sarah, her best friend since college, who simply disappeared when Caroline needed her most. About how each loss felt like removing a pillar of support until the whole structure crumbled. "But it wasn't just that," Caroline continued, her voice breaking. "I'd been through bad things before. I lost my mother years ago. I'd survived breakups, disappointments. But this time, something broke inside me in a different way. As if my brain simply shut off the ability to feel hope, to imagine a future, to want to exist." Have you had thoughts about hurting yourself? About suicide? The question was direct, no holds barred. Caroline appreciated the raw honesty. Every day, every hour. She looked down at her hands. "Yesterday I was going to take all my medicine. I was holding the bottle when my brother called. If he had called 5 minutes later, I wouldn't be here now." Dr. Anderson didn't look shocked. She just nodded, taking notes. "And now? Right now, do you still feel like you want to hurt yourself?" Caroline considered the question honestly. "I don't know if I want to live, but I also don't know if I want to die. I'm just tired, so incredibly tired of carrying this weight. I want the pain to stop, and death seems like the only way to make it stop." "I see." Dr. Anderson leaned forward slightly. "Caroline, I'll be completely honest with you. What you're describing is severe, major depression, possibly with components of persistent depressive disorder. It's not weakness. It's not you being dramatic. It's a real medical condition, as legitimate as diabetes or asthma. Your brain, specifically the brain chemistry that regulates mood, motivation, and perception, is fundamentally dysregulated. Then I am broken, defective. No, you're sick, and sickness has a cure." The doctor opened a folder. "There are multiple approaches we need to implement simultaneously. First, medication. Have you tried antidepressants before? For 3 weeks, it didn't work. 3 weeks isn't enough. Most antidepressants take 4 to 6 weeks to fully take effect, and we often need to adjust dosages or try different medications until we find the right combination. She paused. I'll prescribe something different from what you've been taking before, an SSRI combined with another medication that can help with anhedonia, that inability to feel pleasure you described. But you need to commit to taking it for at least 8 weeks before we can evaluate its effectiveness. Caroline nodded mechanically. Pills seemed so inadequate against the abyss she felt. How could tiny pills cure something so massive? Second, intensive therapy, not casual bi-weekly sessions. I need you to start cognitive behavioral therapy twice a week with a licensed psychologist. I'll give you referrals. Dr. Anderson looked at her seriously. Third, structure. Severe depression destroys routine, and lack of routine fuels depression. It's a vicious cycle. Your brother will help you establish a basic routine. Regular sleep schedules, scheduled meals, small daily tasks. They may seem insignificant, but they are foundations. What if none of this works? Caroline whispered. What if I'm a lost cause? Dr. Anderson held her gaze. You're not a lost cause. I've been treating severe depression for 23 years. I've seen people where you are now and deeper find their way back. It's not quick, it's not linear. There will be terrible days even during recovery, but it's absolutely possible. She stood up, took out a small card and handed it to Caroline. My number is here. If at any time you feel like you're going to get hurt, you call me, no matter the time, day or night. Understood. Extreme depression and rebirth. Caroline's transformation. She stood up, took out a small card and handed it to Caroline. My number is here. If at any time you feel like you're going to get hurt, you call me, no matter the time, day or night. Understood? Caroline held the card like an anchor, a phone number, a tangible connection to someone who could help when the darkness returned. And she knew it would. Understood, she whispered. The appointment lasted another hour. Dr. Anderson asked detailed questions about her medical history, sleep patterns, appetite, alcohol consumption, and substance use. Each answer painted a more complete picture of the devastation depression had wrought. By the end, Caroline had 3 prescriptions, a list of recommended therapists, and something she hadn't had in months. A plan. Michael was exactly where she'd left him, reading something on his phone but clearly tense. When he saw her, his shoulders visibly relaxed. How it was. Difficult, honest, necessary. Caroline showed the prescriptions. She wants me to start these today and to find a therapist for 2 sessions a week. So let's go to the pharmacy now, and I'll call the therapist this afternoon. Michael picked up his backpack. 1 step at a time, remember? The pharmacy was bright and crowded. Too much sensory stimulation after months of isolation. Caroline felt anxiety rising, a cold sweat on the back of her neck, her heart racing. She grabbed Michael's arm. Too many people, too much noise. I can't. Breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. He took an exaggerated patterned breath. Caroline tried to imitate him, her uneven, shallow breathing slowly deepening. You're safe. I'm here. Just a few more minutes. It was 10 minutes that felt like hours, but she survived, a small victory that added to the other microscopic ones of the day. Back at the apartment, they found the cleaning crew Michael had hired, 3 efficient women who transformed months of neglect into order in a matter of hours. Caroline watched from the couch, partly embarrassed to let strangers see how low she had fallen, partly relieved that she wouldn't have to face this mountain alone. Don't worry, dear, one of the women said gently as she passed. We've seen it all. You're not alone in this. Those words, you're not alone in this, stuck with Caroline. How many other people were fighting invisible battles? How many other apartments hid the same kind of silent pain? That afternoon, Michael set up a whiteboard on the kitchen wall, something he found in one of the cabinets. He divided it into columns: morning, afternoon, evening. Basic routine, he explained. Nothing ambitious, just foundations. He began to write. Morning, wake up at 8 a.m., take medication, eat breakfast. Doesn't have to be big. Shower or wash your face. Afternoon, lunch, a short activity. Walk for 10 minutes, or read for 15 minutes, or find a corner. Snack, night, dinner, medication, sleep ritual. Tea, writing 3 sentences in a journal, lights out at 10 p.m. Caroline stared at the board. It seemed simultaneously absurdly simple and frighteningly impossible. What if I can't do it all? So, you do what you can. Some days you'll get everything. Other days, just getting out of bed is a victory. Michael set the marker down. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. It's training your brain that there's structure, that there's predictability, that tomorrow will come and there will be things to do. They tested the routine that night. Dinner was vegetable soup and rice, comfort food Michael had cooked. Caroline ate slowly, each bite a conscious decision. Afterward, she took her new medications with a full glass of water, reading and rereading the instructions as if they were sacred scripture. The sleep ritual was strange. Michael gave him a simple notebook, blue cover, blank pages. 3 sentences about anything. Doesn't have to be deep, doesn't have to be positive, just has to be honest. Caroline stared at the blank page, her pen trembling slightly in her hand. What was there to write? What thoughts were worth capturing when her mind was an empty desert? Finally, she wrote, "Today I didn't die. I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's true. Michael is here. I don't deserve this, but I'm grateful. The pills are small and white. I hope they work." It wasn't poetry, it wasn't inspiring, but it was raw truth, and that felt important. At 10 p.m., she lay in her clean bed, lights off, listening to the soft sounds of Michael making the sofa in the living room. For the first time in months, she wasn't completely alone in her apartment. There was another person breathing, existing, caring within earshot. The dark thoughts came as they always did. You're a burden. Michael is sacrificing his life for you. You should have ended it all yesterday. But this time, Caroline picked up Dr. Anderson's card from the bedside table. She ran her fingers over the printed number. She didn't call. It still wasn't that bad. But knowing she could, that there was someone on the other end if she needed it, was like having a security blanket. "One day," she whispered into the darkness, "I survived one day. I can try to survive another." And with that thought, so small, so fragile, but undeniably present, Caroline closed her eyes. The next few days weren't linear. Recovery rarely is. On day 3, Caroline woke up at 8 a.m. as planned, took her medication, but couldn't get out of bed afterward. The weight was back, that invisible concrete on her chest. Michael found her there 2 hours later, eyes open but empty, staring at the ceiling. "I can't," she said simply. "It's okay." He didn't push, didn't give a pep talk. He just brought toast and juice and sat on the edge of the bed. "Some days are like that. Did you take your medicine?" "I took it." "Then you've already won today. The rest can wait." He stood there for half an hour, not saying much, just being present. Eventually, Caroline got up to go to the bathroom and managed with Herculean effort to wash her face and change her clothes. Small victory. Day 5 was different. Caroline woke up and for a brief moment, maybe 3 seconds, she didn't immediately feel the crushing weight. There was an almost imperceptible lightness, as if someone had removed a single stone from a mountain of stones. It wasn't happiness, not even close, but it was a momentary absence of utter despair, and that was something. She completed the entire morning routine. Wake up medication, coffee. She managed to eat a whole piece of toast. Shower. As she checked off each item on the whiteboard, she felt something strange. Perhaps satisfaction. Maybe just relief that she hadn't completely failed. "You're doing incredibly well," Michael said, as he saw her dressed at 10 a.m. "I just showered and ate. Normal people do that without thinking. You're not normal people now. You're fighting an invisible war every single day, and today you're winning some battles." He pointed to her sneakers. "Want to try the 10-minute walk today?" The outside world was terrifying. But Carolyn thought of the girl in her dream, that version of herself who still had hope. She deserved Caroline to try. Only 10 minutes? Not a second more if you don't want to. They walked only around the block. The October sun was gentle, the air fresh without being cold. Caroline kept her eyes on the ground most of the time, avoiding eye contact with strangers. Each step seemed deliberate, heavy, but she took them. 7 minutes later, she stopped. "I need to go back. Too much stimulation." 7 minutes is incredible. Michael turned back without hesitation. That night, his 3 sentences in his diary were, "I walked for 7 minutes today. My lungs remembered how to breathe outside air. The pills still don't work magic, but I keep taking them." Michael called me brave. I didn't believe him, but I kept his words to myself. Day 7 brought the first therapy session. The therapist, Lisa Chen, was younger than Caroline expected, perhaps 35, with calm energy and direct questions. There was no judgment as Caroline described her suicidal thoughts, her paralysis, and the lost months. "Do you know what catastrophic thinking is?" Lisa asked. Caroline shook her head. "It's when your brain takes a situation and immediately jumps to the absolute worst-case scenario, as if it were a given. Depression feeds into this constantly. I failed at this small thing, therefore I am a complete failure, and always will be. Adusti, I feel bad today, therefore I will never get better. Do you recognize these patterns?" Caroline recognized it. They were practically the constant script in her head. "Let's work on identifying these thoughts and challenging them. Not with toxic positivity. I'm not going to ask you to think positive when you're in agony, but with realism, with evidence, with nuance." Lisa leaned forward. "Your brain is lying to you constantly right now. Our job is to teach you to question those lies." It was exhausting. 45 minutes of dissecting thought patterns left Caroline drained. But there was also something liberating in naming the monsters, in dragging the darkness into the light and examining it. On day 10, the last day Michael would be there before returning to Portland for a few days, Caroline woke up and did something she hadn't done in months. She opened her laptop. The screen flashed, demanding a password. She typed, fingers trembling, hundreds of unread emails, ignored social media notifications, messages piled up from people who eventually stopped trying. He didn't try to answer everything. He didn't try to rebuild broken connections. But he opened a blank document and wrote, "My name is Caroline. I'm 32 years old. I almost died 10 days ago, not by accident, but by choice. I have severe depression. This isn't my entire identity, but it's my reality now. I'm taking medication, in therapy, trying to rebuild basic routines that normal people do without thinking. Some days I succeed. Other days, just breathing is a victory. I don't know if I'll be okay. I don't know if I'll ever be who I was again, but I'm trying. And for today, that has to be enough." She saved the document. She didn't share it with anyone. She wasn't ready. But it was there, a testament to her struggle, proof that there was still someone behind the fog of depression. "Did you work on the computer?" Michael asked when he saw her closing the laptop. "I just wrote. Nothing important." "Caroline, you sitting down and doing anything creative is huge. It's your brain remembering it can create, not just consume darkness." He smiled. "I'm proud of you. That night, as Michael packed for the next morning's flight, panic began to rise. What if she fell apart without him? What if the dark thoughts returned stronger? What if she couldn't maintain her routine alone? "Hey!" Michael grabbed her shoulders, forcing eye contact. "You're not alone. Emily's coming tomorrow night and staying the weekend. You have Dr. Anderson's number. You have Lisa twice a week. You have neighbors if you need emergency help. And I'm always just a phone call away." What if it's not enough? So you survive 1 minute at a time until it's enough. He pulled her into a hug. "You already died 10 days ago in your mind, but look at you, still here, still fighting, still breathing. You're stronger than you think." Caroline didn't feel strong. She felt fragile, like cracked glass. But maybe, just maybe, cracked glass could still hold water. It still had a function. It still had a purpose, even if imperfect. 3 months later, Caroline still wasn't cured. The depression didn't magically disappear. There were bad days when getting out of bed seemed impossible, when dark thoughts whispered. But there were also better days. Days when she walked for 20 minutes, when she laughed, when she wrote more than 3 sentences. The medication began to work in the 6th week, not like a light switch, but like a gradual dawn. First, the colors returned. Then the ability to feel small pleasures, coffee in the morning, sunlight on the skin, pages of a book. It wasn't explosive joy, but it was something, and something was infinitely better than nothing. She worked as a freelancer, managing small projects from her apartment. The whiteboard still hung in the kitchen, marking routines completed. Not all of them, but enough. The notebook now had pages filled with thoughts, fears, and small victories. Caroline still went to therapy twice a week. She was still taking medication. She had called Dr. Anderson twice on dark nights, and the voice on the other end guided her back. She was no longer the Caroline she'd been before, a confident developer with a perfect life. But she wasn't the broken woman who'd given up on life either. She was something new, under construction, imperfect but present. When I thought about the future, I didn't just see a black void. I saw nebulous, uncertain, but real possibilities. I saw blank pages waiting to be written with honest truth. One day at a time, one breath at a time, one choice at a time. She was still here. And for now, that was enough. If you've made it this far, to the end of this story, I want you to know, your presence matters. The simple fact that you've stuck with me through this entire journey means something. Maybe this story resonated with you. Maybe you know someone going through this, or maybe you're in this battle yourself. If this message reached you in any way, leave a comment. This story was for me. No need to explain anything, but let me know you were there, that you felt it. Because sometimes just knowing we're not alone makes a difference. If this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about real things, real struggles, and rebuilding, without romanticizing pain, but without losing hope. Leave a like too, because it shows me that it's worth continuing to create stories like this, honest and human. There's a video here that talks about how to identify signs of depression in people close to you. It complements this topic and can give you tools to help someone else. Click and follow me there. Thank you for being here, truly. Caroline didn't feel strong. She felt fragile, like cracked glass. But maybe, just maybe, cracked glass could still hold water. It still had a function. It still had a purpose, however imperfect.